then begin.
Perfect, perfect. JD, thank you so much for talking with me. I'm Justin D. Jenkins from the Quintessential Gentleman. Really appreciate you taking the time out. Really enjoyed Devotion. It was such a
Oh, thanks, man.
story. I cried a little bit. It was a while since
Good.
I cried at a movie. Talk to me
Hey.
about your own personal experience and like what inspired you to come on board this project.
I mean, in a funny way, the tie was really direct. 30 years after Jesse became an aviator, my dad became an aviator. So some of my earliest memories are all around Navy bases, naval aviation, and I'd always been so inspired by just my dad's dream of wanting to be in that cockpit, and years later finding himself in one. So when I was introduced to the script and I read it for the first time, I cried my way through reading it. Not just because Jesse's story is so incredible, but also I just saw so much of my dad in there too. So I felt kind of called to tell this story, not just to get to sort of spread the gospel of who Jesse and Tom were, but I also, in a way that I never expected I'd be able to in my life, like also get to tell my dad's story. Oh,
That
you're
was
muted.
amazing. So why was Jonathan Majors the perfect person to play Jesse Brown in this story?
I mean, look, man, Jonathan's the best. um,
Yeah.
I mean, that man just holds such depth and richness, and he can kind of throttle the work so specifically. I mean, we would talk a lot while working on the film, just like let's make sure that we're using all the crayons in the box, to sort of shade who Jesse is. But Jonathan's the kind of actor where it's not just Roy G. Biv. You're not just getting the primary colors. Like we've got 500 hues of blue, and that is what I think just that's what I owe Jesse's richness to, is just Jonathan's ability to really specifically find what he is looking to evoke, in that spectrum.
That's amazing. What I really loved about the story was the love story that was kind of a driving force in it. Why was that such
Mhm.
a plot or just such a thing to highlight throughout the movie? And it was so subtle, but it was so beautiful, and just the different scenes that Jesse and his wife shared. Why was that important for you to kind of portray in the film?
Yeah, I mean, look, D- Daisy was the one who poured water into Jesse's, steam engine, and if you don't illustrate that, if you don't share that, I and we just felt like that's such a missed opportunity to understanding how Jesse got to where he got to. So much of that is owed to Daisy. Um, and look, I think it's like the kind of unfortunate war movie thing where it's like, oh, we need to like cut the family stuff out so we can focus on the action. But this was always going to be a story that was meant to celebrate who Jesse was, and what he did. And there's no way to tell that story without also understanding how important Daisy was to him. So there was kind of no other way to break it without her sort of being the beating heart at the center.
Yeah, she definitely was, and what I also like you said, it is a war movie, and there's plenty of action, but it was such like a beautifulness of it, and it obviously from the cinematography standpoint, what went into picking a cinematographer, and like why it kind of like you drew back a little bit from, explosions and so much what we see in war epics. And
Mhm.
throughout the film, from the friendship between Jesse and Tom and the shots and the scenes and the sequences, everything was just like so beautifully done. And that's why I
Well,
think I
thank you.
really kind of love this film more. So, what was your mindset going in to pick a cinematographer, and what did you want to portray as a director for this film?
Yeah, I mean, my thought from the beginning was just I wanted to try to split the balance between a classic feeling and a more modern feeling. I didn't want to pour period piece all over the movie, because I think the second that you see 1950, like you get it, and I don't need to double down on that. So still having the film feel composed and modern and and thoughtful was really important to me. And in looking for cinematographers who I think conjure that feeling innately, Eric Messerschmidt's name came up very quickly. And you even take something like Mindhunter, where again it is period, but there's nothing about that show that feels old. It's got incredibly thoughtful composition. The palette is really interesting. There's a stoicism while also being really kinetic and contemporary. So all of that stuff was like, oh man, that's also what I'm after in Devotion. And Eric was just such a awesome collaborator in that regard, because we really could have camera be character too, and sort of find complementary action for the camera across from our actors and what the story we're telling with them is. So yeah, from the beginning, we just knew we wanted it to feel, even though it's 1950, we never wanted that to be, we never wanted that to complicate the point of entry. We never wanted that world to feel far away from us. So finding these ways to tell it, you know, to tell it through a modern lens, I think only helps it feel more urgent.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the friendship between Tom and Jesse. Was that a driving factor of how you wanted to kind of tell this story? Because obviously you could have told the story so many different ways. And that friendship and that brotherhood that they kind of, created, was that something that you were intentional about?
Yeah, I mean that's a Tom Hudner is a big part of Jesse Brown's story, and obviously, without fully getting into it, knowing how the movie ends, if you don't understand their relationship, the end doesn't really connect, So working backwards from that, you need to make sure that that relationship and the subtle push and pull of them trying to figure each other out really has to be there for the
Yeah.
final act to actually mean something. But again, it's like this is also part of trying to tell the story through a modern lens. It's I feel like I didn't have much to contribute by way of only showing Jesse's hardship trying to get to the dream that he's always had, but instead start to play with how hard is it to trust people when you've given everything to be here and you've only been able to trust yourself? Like the maintenance of that excellence is a headspace I just hadn't seen as often in movies like this. So that and how Tom plays into that story just felt like, okay, you know what? There's something really sticky here. There's something really fresh and ripe to try to base our story, sort of off that foundation.
Yeah. And lastly, what do you hope the audience takes away from this film?
I mean, look, I hope they take away so much, man. I mean, look, I hope they're entertained. I hope that they are almost shocked to hear about this for the first time and wonder why they haven't, and have that sort of spin the wheels on how many more stories there must be like this if something so big and honestly so cosmic has been beneath the radar for so long. But I got to say, a really big part of this film for me is shining a light on Jesse and Tom's story, because Jesse's still not home, and to just illuminate, how many of our soldiers, how many of our family members, how many of our friends, have not made their way back home yet. You just want to continue to inspire the effort to get our folks back, and that is a piece that I think as the movie ends, starts a conversation, and the real good ending to this story is still open, and we hope it can be, we hope it can be a good ending and we get Jesse home.
Again, thank you so much, JD Dillard. This was a great talking to you. The movie is fantastic. I hope everyone
Thanks,
sees
man.
it. This is really such a beautiful film. I can't say
Thanks,
enough
man.
positive things about it. And good luck. And
Hey,
I know the audience will be
thanks,
happy to
dog.
see it.
Hey,
Thank
I can't wait. And
you.
thanks for chatting, man.
Awesome, awesome. Have a great day.